Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at the Spanish Indecision, what with a snap general election, an unprecedented situation following the first vote that took place last December. We're talking about it in the company of Andres Ortega, former policy advisor to Spain's previous socialist government political commentator. Many thanks for being with us again from Madrid. Welcome back as well to attorney and commentator Edward Salsas and Dida Gutierrez Perez of the Opinion Institute Via Voice. Now, faith in the system shaken, and there's no telling that a fresh election can change that.
I think the parties have failed to take it seriously, above all because of what's at stake for Spain. I think Spaniards are, or at least I am, disappointed.
I think the parties are entrenched in their own ideas. And if they have failed to compromise in the first phase, I don't think they will do it easily in the second phase.
Edward Salsas, your reaction to the people basically discarding, because last December that was the narrative, right? That the reason these new parties were entering parliament was because they were tired of the old politicians. Now they're tired of the old and the new ones, it seems.
Well, they were tired of the old politicians, but it wasn't enough. In the December election, Ciudadanos got a disappointing result. They were expected to have about 60 seats. They only got 49. So it wasn't enough for Ciudadanos. It wasn't enough for Podemos, this party was expecting to make the sorpaso on the Socialist Party. They did not.
Why? So, why didn't these parties do better than it said at the polls?
Well, because I think it's they are parties that have never governed at any level of the state or regions or cities. They are just starting now. We're just starting now to see how these parties can rule in cities, like in Barcelona or in Madrid, where the mayor is from Podemos. But the Socialist Party and the Popular Party had a basis of voters that were very faithful, namely in Andalusia for the Socialists and in the Popular Party for the central part of Spain. And these people will switch parties. The new parties will have to do a lot more, for these people to change their vote.
Andres Ortega, I'm haunted by something you said in part one of our discussion. You said that the socialist leader Pedro Sanchez doesn't want to govern with the outgoing Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy. Doesn't want to govern with Rajoy, but does he perhaps want to govern with the Popular Party, with the ruling center-right party? Could we see a German-style grand coalition?
I've never excluded it, even though the socialists themselves excluded it. But I think that the situation we will have after the next elections will be new, completely new. And if there is a failure of reaching an agreement to get a coalition government or a coalition to govern, the system will be in crisis. I don't think we have a political crisis now. We have a lack of culture, a lack of experience in that kind of situations, which other countries know better how to deal with it. But I think there would be a political crisis. I wonder
how would Spain be different if there was a grand coalition? How would it change the political culture?
Well, what I think the PSOE doesn't want is to leave Podemos on the opposition, on the left, no? But a grand coalition, what I think is needed in Spain is a series of changes in the political system, in the economic and social system, which could take 2 years, including a change of the constitution. And we would need a government for 2 years and a majority to change the constitution. And to change the constitution, you need an agreement between the Socialist Party and the Popular Party, plus all the parties, of course.
Dida Gutierrez? Is that the reality we're staring at, a grand coalition?
I think there's a very, very important point here, which connects with what we were saying before, is that at some point they will need to agree. So at some point they will need to make the effort of understanding each other. At some point they will need to understand that the perfect bilateral government is over. So at this point, even for a constitutional reform, even for a permanent government, the culture needs to change. And in that sense, I think that there are some lessons, and I think that the parties have also learned some lessons from this first failed attempt.
Because that's what they were saying in Belgium, right? And then they waited, nearly 600 days before they formed a government.
Yes, I think that's another part of the situation. And here we talk a lot about institutional and maths, but at the same time, Spanish is not perfectly recovered from a very, very, very hard crisis.
I was going to say it bore the full brunt of that 2008 crisis. Unemployment at a EU high at one point of 26%. And now the numbers are down, but they've been revised upwards to 19.9 for this year. Is it like in France where unemployment is the issue?
Yes, it is, and the problem in Spain is like I'm surprised how respectful the markets have been, because in other countries, when you have 8 months of instability or political instability, sometimes you can pay it a very high price for that. So I think there's a big risk. Spain has problems that needs to be solved. There's social needs that need to be addressed, and there's this kind of stability that definitely needs to be overcome. There's no option for leaders to remain not agreeing while the country needs a government.
26% unemployment at one point. If that had happened here in France, it's fairly safe to say there would have been mass protests across the country, and there were mass protests at one point in Spain. But what do you agree about this notion that the Spanish have a high tolerance for suffering?
I do agree. Unfortunately, I do agree that the Spanish people have a very high tolerance for suffering, because this crisis has been very, very hard, especially for young people and for families. And we need to recall that Spain does not have the social protection, at least the European standard social protection. It's not France, it's not Sweden. The unemployment allocations are lower and shorter. So yes, the crisis was very hard, but people have more or less coped with that. However, the new parties have appeared because of this. There's no other explanation for this. People realized that the former socialist government started the economic crisis, and the Popular Party continued.
And you heard on that point Andres Ortega's reasoning that eventually the system has to change. To change the system, you need a big majority, so you'll need at some point perhaps that grand coalition. But if you get that grand coalition, is it the same as in Austria, where people get so mad with the system that they'll start voting for the far right and voting for anti-establishment parties that are more vociferous?
Well, it has already started in Spain. They are voting for anti-capitalism or anti-austerity parties. Podemos is, I would say, with all the prudence and all the distance, it's like the extreme right parties. It shows the same kind of feeling in a more moderate way. Is a grand
coalition good or bad for democracy?
I don't think it's possible in Spain, a grand coalition. I don't think it's possible.
Except that I was saying the difference is that Podemos is not an anti-European party, you know, and I would like to say something about unemployment. It's not only unemployment. Is that with the recovery and with what's happened in the last few years, the salaries have been going down. So now we have a recovery which is producing lower salary, lower expectations for young, a future which is bleak, and a new thing we have in Spain, which other countries had, which is working poor, you know? People who are working for a very low salary. We used to laugh about what we call mileuristas, people who earn 1,000 euros a year. Now, for many young people, that's a luxury.
On that point, Didac Gutierrez.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's one of the biggest changes for these elections coming is how the generation that is living abroad will vote. And I think that is going to be a very, very interesting point because there's a massive exodus of new young Spaniards that they lived in Spain and during the crisis and the last years they are going abroad. So it will be, I think, symptomatic to see how
And how will they vote?
I think when your first question when we started the debate was is there's a generational gap between some of the parties, and I would say the surveys are completely clear. The Popular Party has a more older electorate, and definitely I would say that this new generation will probably not vote for the Popular Party and will choose one of the other parties. So it will be also symptomatic how this Spanish exodus will vote on these new elections.
Now, I got to say, here in France, we've been paying a lot of attention to the change in Spain. We've seen the current economy minister here in this country, Emmanuel Macron, who positions himself as a reformer. He started his own political movement. He seems to fashion himself a little bit after Ciudadanos. And we've seen as well, there's been this sort of Occupy Paris movement called Nuit debout, up all night at Paris's Place de la République, which more seems inspired by Podemos. How similar or how different are they?
I think there's it's striking when you work on surveys and polls, how the Spanish system changed when politicians became one of the first problems for Spaniards. So when you asked Spanish people, where were the first or where were the most important problem in your country? When politicians and political parties started to get at the top of this list, the system broke up and you had a change. And I think that for the first time here in France, we are seeing the same things. Just today at Le Monde.
Because we have a presidential election next year in this country.
And we have a presidential election. So I think just today at Le Monde, there's a big survey saying that even the left electorate, who was the last one to be faithful, is starting to be on a majority saying that the political parties and even politics are the problem. So when this happens, I think that you have the perfect ingredient.
And those people who are deserting the French socialists, are they more Ciudadanos or are they more Podemos?
I would say Macron has definitely had something very interesting for some of the left electorate here in France. And I think if Ciudadanos it was more at the beginning right center, I think Macron is trying to fill this gap of the center left. So I'm not sure where they will go. And the other issue here is like in 1 year we need to see if Nuit debout has a potentiality to become a party, because in Spain we have parties that they have recollected these new feelings.
It's still embryonic here.
In France. Yeah. Macron, he's a little bit alone, and Nuit debout, I would say, I'm not sure it will happen.
Edward Saldes, do the comparisons stop at the border, or do you feel as though all of Europe is changing in the way that we've been describing the change in Spain?
Well, I think that all Europe is changing. Politics are changing in Spain. The traditional parties no longer, there's no all these alternates between left and right. We have these parties like Ciudadanos, but appearing in other countries where we actually don't know if they're left or right. What are they exactly? The center, they take some things from the left, some things from the right. So politics are changing across Europe.
And how would you describe the new fault lines then, if politics are changing? What's the new fault line?
Well,
if left and right no longer matter, what is the fault line? Hard to say?
That is very, very hard to say. I would say that I think that the new parties, the speech of the new parties, these parties that are a mix of left and right, they play with hope on people. I think that there's a lack of hope. There's a hope crisis, like in Europe. We don't know exactly what to do with the European Union, with these very, very basic institutions, and they are playing. They are trying to find the right way to find a way forward.
Andres Ortega, are these new parties right to try and sell hope?
Yes, but then they don't sell hope because they don't have a plan. They don't have a project of a country because I think there is no project of Europe. And when there is no project of Europe, Spain goes badly, as we have seen in the past. No? You were saying about the fault lines between the parties. I think that more than left and right, now it's between new and old and up and down, no? Which I think are the main differences at the moment. In the working sector, for example, among people who work, there is a two-tier system. People who have all the jobs and live very well, and new people who are arriving new to the job system, and they get very unstable situations, very low paid, and all that. So I think that is the kind of divisions which produce a declassing, what in French you call a déclassement of the middle classes, which is happening everywhere, in Spain, in France, in the whole of Europe, and even in the US, as we see.
I want to pick up on what you just said there, Andres, about how Spain's lot is tied to that of the European Union. It certainly has been since it first entered after the end of the dictatorship in the early 80s. Are you saying that Spain goes, really that Spain's fate depends on how well the EU does?
No, I'm saying that after the dictatorship, we knew what we wanted to be. We wanted to join what is called now the European Union. We wanted to be like you, the French, or the Germans. We wanted to have a welfare system and a welfare state. And now we don't know where to go, really, And there is no discussion really on where Spain should go, because Europe doesn't know where to go, and we are now in the European boat. And if Europe doesn't work well, what I'm saying is that Spain doesn't know where to go. No.
Didac Gutierrez-Perez, do you agree?
Well, it's true that there's a little of more in certain decision making or vision for Spain, but I do think that something it's very clear, and one of the new lines or one of the new political lines that separate ones from the others across Europe, it's precisely Europe. So it's precisely pro-European, anti-European. And I do think that this is just started to be a very clear pattern across different countries. We might go to a system where the big difference is: are you pro-Europe?
The line is pro or anti?
Or anti-Europe, and this is something that we are not used to it, because Europe has been very intergovernmental. So we didn't have to worry much about European elections. We didn't know exactly what our government was doing in Brussels. This has definitely changed, and I think that's where you see a difference between a Podemos and a Front National, where you see a difference between UKIP or Nuit Debout. Is like some of these new parties are definitely pro-European or for another Europe, and there are others that they are anti-Europe. And I think that this line will become more and more clearer for the years to come.
And in Spain, who are the anti-Europe camp?
I think that Spain is a little bit a very different case, because we have benefited so much from Europe that this will take more time to come. But I will definitely see some of the parties being more and more openly anti-European or becoming to play with this populist rhetoric against Europe.
All right, we'll see what happens in the build-up to that June 26th election. I want to thank you, Didac Gutierrez Paris. I want to thank Edward Salsas, Andres Ortega for being with us from Madrid. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next. Enter James Creedon. How are you, sir?
Very well, François. Just a look at how the election or the upcoming election is playing out in the world's media. Spain doomed to new elections after King Felipe unable to bring parties together. That's the headline in zerohedge.com, talking about how the country's 3-decade-old political duopoly was broken when the PP and PSOE garnered their lowest combined share of the vote since the 80s. Another first is being referred to in the conservative daily in Spain, ABC, talking about how it's the first time, in fact, that the king has announced a general election since the return of democracy in 1977. And the ABC says this marks the end of a political spectacle, and the paper deplores the fact that 128 days have been lost since the last election.
The king, who's obviously the family's been much maligned. His father had to step down. Everything. Is this going to change the role of the monarchy, the current crisis?
Well, one of the big questions was how would the monarchy cope with all this situation? And I believe that it wasn't that bad. The king was the one who unlocked the situation we had after the election, because he's, from a protocolarian point of view, he's the one appointing somebody to ask for the confidence of the parliament.
So he does play a role.
So he actually played a role, because Mariano Rajoy refused to do that, while traditionally the most voted party, the leader of the most voted party was the one asking first for that vote for the parliament, and he refused that. So actually that was a dead end, and the king kind of managed to, well, I'll ask the second one, I'll ask Pedro Sanchez. So he was he kind of unlocked the situation, and now again, by asking, by convoking this third round of consultation for all the parties represented in the parliament, actually what he did is, well, I call them, I hear them, and I acknowledge that there's no agreement, that there's no possible agreement until 2nd of May, until next Monday. So this situation is over.
So in terms of other analysis that we're finding, Open Europe looking at how things might change in this second round of elections, they say that the centre-right Partido Popular of the caretaker Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, because he wasn't involved in these exhausting discussions, these coalition talks, he could actually be in a stronger position now, and he could, for example, argue that Pedro Sanchez failed in his bid to become the new prime minister. He wasn't putting the interests of the country first. Meanwhile, the anti-establishment Podemos party will stress that Sanchez had the opportunity to muster a fully fledged left-wing coalition, but he simply refused to do so. So the speculation here is that Sanchez could, in fact, be the loser of this rerun. For the Financial Times, they're looking at 3 possible outcomes: a centre-right majority if, as recent polls indicate, the Popular Party and the centrist Ciudadanos party may rise just enough to provide a coalition. Otherwise, a resurgent left. Now, what they're looking at here is Podemos forming an alliance with the United Left, another left-wing party, although they have failed to agree up to now. But because small parties are heavily penalised in Spain, it might be in their interest to form an alliance which would give them a chance of overtaking the Socialists. Third option is no change, which would mean more of that. This is a cartoon from El Mundo. And so, we'll have to, I guess, wait and see if it's going to be something that will benefit the right, the left, or no change.
All right, and we will indeed see and keep following it. Many thanks for that, James Creedon. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.